Hi, this is Roger. Thanks for dropping by. Between yesterday and today, absolutely everything's been watered in here, and it's dawned on me, apart from the fact I've just spotted a pot that's fallen over, I'll deal with that in a minute, that my Dendrobiums are at many different stages, and I'm going to have to start going careful from now. I mean, my night temperatures are already dropping down. Thanks to the dehumidifier, I'm saving an awful lot by the heater not coming on. I mean, obviously as it gets colder, when we get to the real cold weather and we start getting down, you know, with frosts and everything, I suspect the heater will be required as well. But at the moment, the dehumidifier is providing all the heat I need overnight. So that's a real relief from my point of view. But what I thought today is we'll just have a quick look round. It's going to be a bit messy because obviously I need one hand to move things and one hand with the camera in it. And it's Dendrobiums I'm picking on. Now they're mixed up with lots of other stuff, fair enough. And I probably won't be able to get to every single one, but we'll get the gist of it. Now if we come over here, we've got two that would come into the same category of Latoria type or along those lines. Now one of them came from Lynn recently and is in a pot with bark and whatever that is, grow stones or something. So that's in a pot. That's important. Over here is one I've had a while. This is Roy Tokunaga. Now that's also in a pot, but it's in a clay pot. Now that has recently matured a nice new growth, and it's just starting another one. There. So that's coming into growth. Yeah? This one isn't. So they're both at different stages. This one has matured its growths. This one is maturing one and has a new one starting. So they've got to be treated differently. But they've also got to be treated differently because of what they're in. That one's in a holy clay pot. That one is going to dry faster than that one. Yeah? Because that one's in an ordinary pot where the evaporation can only really happen out the top of the pot. Whereas that one, evaporation can happen out the top and the holes plus through the clay. Yeah, so they've got to be treated differently. And then we come over here. This is my Trigonopus that I got from Trey at Malvern. Now that's pushed on a nice new growth since I got it. That is nowhere near mature yet, but I doubt if it will grow any more. Yeah. Now all three of those come into one category, and the category they come into is they're not going to like the low temperatures in the winter. So despite this one pushing up a new growth, it may not mature properly. It might not even get going. It might just stay as a nubbin and not grow. But I'm hoping, you know, there'll be enough daytime temperature to at least get it to grow, even if it doesn't get to full maturity. But these three come into a category where they're going to have to be drier in winter, to the point where they do totally dry out in between and then get a trickle. And at the moment, that one's not at that stage if it's going to push that new growth. That one is, and this one isn't. The trouble is with this one, it's in a black pot and I don't know what's going on underneath the plant. At the moment, I don't see new roots coming out of this new growth yet. So those are they. When we come over here, we've got some biggies. Now, both of these here, this one goes up to the roof with the blooms on the top, and this one doesn't go up to the roof. But both of them are currently in active growth. So this one over here is pushing up this cane. That's not finished growing yet, that's still growing at the top. This one has got two new growths pushing on like this with lots of new roots coming out. This one has already done quite a lot of new roots, they're still growing. So both of those are in active growth, but they're black hair types. And they will rot their roots sooner than looking at them when it starts to get cold, if they're wet. So those are not only drier in winter, they need a longer period of dry. So already we're getting to differences. So black hair types, if you can keep your nighttime temperatures at a reasonable sort of level, 15 degrees plus, and your daytime temperature with an increase of at least 3 or 4 degrees, yours will keep growing. Yeah, but they will be also affected by short days if you're going to get those as well. So all these factors have got to be taken into consideration. Yeah, so with my black hair type, they will slow down. I suspect these two growths won't mature properly, or if they do, they might take an awful long time to do it. But those are going to virtually stop growing through the winter, I suspect. Now, what have we got over here? We got a couple over here as well. Now, this one here, again, is a Latoria type. This has put up two lovely new canes recently. They've finished growing. They're not fully mature yet. How can we tell? Colour of the leaves. Yeah? Until those leaves get to that colour, the cane isn't fully mature. So there's still stuff going on within that cane. But it's not going to grow any more new growths, I don't suspect. Now that's a Latoria type as well. So that's a drier in winter. But on a mount, I've got reasonable control over that. Now this one, whoops, falling over the air cleaner here. This one here, again, is a black hair type. It's not doing very well, but it is pushing up a new growth. I haven't had this one very long. Has it got a tag? Yes, it has. Ignionivium. Easy for you to say. So I'm not quite sure about this one because I haven't had it long, but it is a black hair type, so that's not going to like the cold. But I would appreciate it if that new growth could at least get going and start with some roots, because it hasn't got very good roots, this one. This one's an oddity because this is Harveyanum. It better be. As I say, I should know that without looking. Yeah, that's Harveyanum. And that doesn't really come into the categories that the others do. It's an odd one. It's like, it comes under others in my notes because it doesn't fit in, you know, it isn't a winter rester as such, but it is going to be a drier in winter. And this has no new growths on it at the moment, and not a very good root system. So that one really does need to stay quite dry, relatively. There's a little nub in there that might turn into a new growth. And then down here, what's this one? Tetragonum. That's just a drier in winter type. Yeah. It's difficult to say what. Again, this doesn't come into a set. It comes into the set that has square pseudobulbs, or canes. Sorry, canes. It's Dendrobium and duh. But they're square. Their cross section is square. Well, there aren't many like that, but I'm not sure. You know, this is just completing a new growth. Again, how do we know? Colour. Yeah, so we can tell that's a new growth, not fully mature yet, hasn't reached its natural shade. So, and just as a matter of interest, these do vary. Now you can see all three colours. Yeah? So the plant on the left's mature green is quite a bit lighter than that one's. So you have to get to know your individual plants. So that's just a drier in winter. That's not hard work, that, especially as it's on the mount. Right, let's see if I can just gently push that back where it came from. This one's obliging. The wheels actually turn in the direction I want to do. The other one doesn't. This one, it's like the wonky trolley that you get in the supermarket. You know, you try and go forward and it just wants to go sideways. Right, now up here, do believe it, on this side there's only 4 plants. One of them's a cattleya, so we won't bother with that. Right, Lindleyi. Yep, winter rester, brighter and cooler in winter. It's done its new growths. They're all mature, you know, apart from that dying leaf down there on a very old cane. All the leaves are the same colour, so everything's mature. It's finished growing for the year. That needs to be rested from now. It's not growing, it's finished for the year, so that's it. That one's already reached the resting point. Now it's little sister, Jenkinsii, is still growing. This one is still pushing out new growths. Not many, but some. So there's a nice big fat one. With that one with the purple tinge and what looks like a little leaf, that's a new leaf. So this one's still growing. There's new growth coming there as well, with new roots starting. So this one's still pushing out roots, pushing out growths and roots. So we won't be resting that one yet. Yeah? But that is a true winter rester. Brighter, cooler, and very dry in winter. But not while it's still growing. So as I go round with the mounts, you know, on my watering regime, this one will start missing out a run or two. This one won't. And if I've got a feed on the go, that'll still get some feed. As will this one, Hercoglossum. Now I don't rest this anyway, I never have done. I always just try and keep this growing through the winter. I mean, you take a big long cane, starts back there, comes down here, and gets to here. And what's the end of it doing? Still growing. So, you know, that canes can stop growing after 3 years on this, so they can continue to grow for 3 years. So there's no way that gets rested, it gets pushed on through the winter. Gently, you know, we don't drown it and stonk it up with ridiculous amounts of feed, but we keep it growing. So that's that one. Right, let's get that bit out of the way. We're going to get to the difficult bit in a minute, which is the ones on that top shelf, because then I'm going to have to get this out of the way. Right, now, coming over here, that's my Primulinum. And again, it's the variety Laos, and this year's canes have finished growing. The canes are not quite mature yet. Yeah, so this one will still get watered and still get a bit of feed if I've got a feed on the go, but only for another couple of weeks. I just want to see that top leaf, that terminal leaf, actually mature. So that one's nearly got to the point where it's going to rest. This one I think is dead, just won't grow, which is a shame. I can't even read the label. This is my Loddigesiae kikis that are just a lousy non-success. Now I don't know what's going to happen with these, but I'm going to stop watering these from now on. These are going to get the slightest bit of water near the base of each of these about once every 2 or 3 weeks. They're going to get next to nothing, and they may grow next year. Well, that's what I thought they'd do this year, and they didn't. Right, this is a Nobile type Comet King, and nice big new growth. That's not this year's growth. That growth started last year, and it's already flowered. Where's this year's new growth then? Didn't get one. So I've got a horrible feeling that's not going to produce a new growth till next year. But obviously that gets rested from now on. There's no point in watering that anymore. It's not growing. There's no growth on there at all. So that's that one. Down here is my Aphyllum. The kikis are still growing, and the only, well, strictly speaking, I haven't got a new cane on this year. I've got lots of kikis instead. Kikis that I took off last year and planted at the base have pushed on a bit, and kikis on the main plant have pushed on, including those 3 down there. So that's all I've got on this year is kikis. They may bloom next year, who knows? But it's still growing, so we don't start resting that yet. This one here is, I've forgotten. Tortilli. Now that is a much drier in winter, not a true winter rester, but a drier in winter. And this year's canes started late. This is last year's canes. These will bloom in the spring. This is this year's canes. And they're not growing very well, and they haven't finished growing. So this one will have to carry on getting watered and just hope it carries on growing into the winter. Otherwise we won't have full-size canes for next year. Yeah. This is next year's blooms, but you know, these need another year before they bloom, if you see what I mean. Now, what's this one? This looks like a new one, so I doubt if it's got a tag. What was that one? I think that was my glomeratum that I got recently. But whatever it is, it's got a cane that's growing, so no rest for you. And then down the bottom here we've got, goodness knows what that is, signatum. Now, I don't know much about that, but I don't need to know anything about it at the moment because the two canes it's got growing are growing. Well, let's keep them growing then as best we can. And then Dendrobium nesta, this one, the two late starting canes for this year are still in full growth. I'm hoping to still get another 6 to 8 inches out of these canes before they decide to stop. And a lot of that will just depend on how cold it gets, you know, and whether, when we go into this time of year, we can get quite sunny days in the autumn, you know, right through towards the end of October and even into the beginning of November. And that makes a hell of a difference on things stopping growing or not. It's the brightness, yeah? So if we get lots of sunny days for the next 6 to 8 weeks, things will carry on growing. Despite those days getting shorter, they're still bright. Right, now let's just see if we can turn this enough. Right, where are we then? Dendrobiums. No, 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 no. Yes. This is my Dendrobium friedrichianum, Hannah, and this is not grown very well at all this year, really badly. New growth's just starting, so I've got no full-length cane, so we're not going to get much of a blooming on that next year, I don't think. It's almost taken a year off. But somewhere down here, if that actually grows, how much do you think I'll get for that? Once I get that into a plant, into a pot or on a mount, this is unique in the world. It is the only one that can have that name. But that Kiki can have that name as well. Who wants that then? Right, so I'm just going to have to kick this because the wheels won't turn. Only so as I can get just up in here. Right, there's a right hodgepodge of Dendrobiums up here. Now, right up there is speciosum, I think. So let's see if I can read the tag through the jungle here. Yeah, that's, no, spectabile, that one is. That's maturing a big new growth out there towards the glass with the lighter coloured leaves again. It's not mature yet. This one is. This is the other new growth from this year. So that's put on 2 really nice new growths this year. Not many roots to go with them, but some, because it was practically rootless. And then my delicatum here, which is still yet to bloom, might actually get thrown outside this year to see if we can get the flipping thing to bloom. But so far no blooms. But it has produced a new cane this year with a mass of roots. It's done a lovely root system under that new cane. So that's that one. This one is Alexandre. That's a Latoria type. Not growing very well at all, but it has put up a new cane and it has matured. Now the spectabile needs to be quite dry in winter, and that could do with cooler temperatures. The delicatums are dry in winter and very cold, or it won't bloom. I'll worry about that maybe. Alexandra is a Latoria type, so that, you know, that would prefer to stay warm. It's not going to stay warm. It's finished growing, so the water on that gets cut right down to next to nothing now. So that's that one sorted. And then up in here, this ugly thing here is a Phalaenopsis type, and its new cane is pushing on quite nicely. It's dropped all of its leaves on the rest of the plant except for one. So I'm hoping that that will just carry on growing, but that's not going to like the cold. This is not doing as well as I'd like, but it's It's not even the one I thought it was. Go away. Forget that one. It's not the one I thought it was. This is not the droids we're looking for. Right, so this is Prima Donna. 2 new canes on this year. One is still growing. So although that needs a rest, that is a nobly type, it's not going to get it yet. And then over behind it here with the stripy canes, the monster, as I call it, because of, you can see the new cane pushing up there, still growing strong. Yeah, this was the last one, and big, strong, healthy Phalaenopsis type. You won't see many Dendrobium Phalaenopsis types that big. It's an odd one, but it is a Phalaenopsis type. Right, next to that is a nobly type. And the new cane on that is the one that is touching the side of the building where it's so big, and it still hasn't finished growing. So a nobly type that's still growing. And then we have another nobly type here that is just so heavy it will not stand up. Its days of standing up on its own are gone, so it's touching the glass. I will have to deal with that, but that's got 2 new canes, one up by the glass and one here. And both are still growing. So that nobly type, and this nobly type have not finished growing yet. So there's no way they're getting rested. And this one I've just knocked over. Now this monster here, new growth here, and another new growth here. Are they going to get any bigger than that? Each one just keeps getting bigger. I don't think I've had any blooms on this yet. This is a Latoria type. Yeah, I don't think I've got this. This hasn't bloomed yet. It's Aussie's Sweetness crossed with Tapiniense, but it is a Latoria type, and it has yet to bloom. I think it will. It's got the strength now, and with these 2 nice new canes, especially this one, and a good root system underneath it, we should get some blooms on that soon. And that'll be interesting because we haven't seen them yet. We've got a clue what they're going to look like. Right, have we got any more? Yes, there's an interesting one. Ouch! Yeah, getting down here is okay, it's getting up. That there is a Phalaenopsis type with 2 strong new canes, both still growing. So that one will just continue to deal with that as a growing plant. That tatty looking object, Phalaenopsis type again, has got kikis and no plant. So I'm not quite sure what to do with that. The one next to it is Dendrobium moniliform. That's the one I thought I was looking at up the top, which isn't growing as well as it perhaps ought to. Now that's a cool grower, so I'm hoping that it will be happy through the winter, but in my humble opinion the pot's too big, so I will have to be very, very careful with the watering with that. That needs to go totally dry in between, otherwise that's not going to be happy. But you know, that's up to me. I've got to accommodate that. Oh, my back. I've got twingy back at the moment. I'm not quite sure why, because I haven't done anything to aggravate it. Perhaps that's the problem. It's getting lazy. Right, I don't think we've got any more Dendrobiums looking round. One, which is the Victoria Regina. Now, this hasn't grown a new cane this year. It looks like it has, but it hasn't really, because this is a kiki. It starts there, but it has produced some roots down into the pot. Now this is one, you can see it's obviously about to do another blooming on top of the one it's already got. And that's all it's going to have, because this isn't much of an annual growth. Just one, what is basically a kiki. So that hasn't grown anything like I would have expected this year. Now this cane here, with the blooms on, is not a cane. It's a kiki. It starts there, and it's got no roots at all. So it's just become part of the plant. This one grows weird. But again, that kiki is still actively growing. Not strong, but it is actively growing. This was the cane I grew last year, I think, this one. And the kiki. So not quite sure what to do with that, but again, that's in a fairly large pot, but that pot is full of roots. So if I overwatered that a bit, it wouldn't be as bad as some of the other plants, because it is a pot full of roots. The ones you've got to go careful with are the ones with the poor root system, where the pot's perhaps a little larger than it should be. It will stay wet. When the temperatures drop down, if it's a Phalaenopsis type, black hair type, Latoria type, and it starts to cool down, it will stop growing or slow down to the extent where it's hardly growing. And once they do that, if you get the roots wet, they'll rot. So they mustn't stay wet. So minimal amount of water, and they must dry. So there we go. That's a look round the Dendrobiums with the plans. And those plans kick in as from today. Now my mounts have already gone to a 3-day cycle. Yeah, so they only get watered every 3rd day now. And some of them, not many, but some of them will now start getting missed out. And they might get missed out twice. Yeah, so that's going to cut their watering down quite dramatically. And the pots I will have to deal with individually. And it will depend on the type and how big the pot is and how strong the root system is. And that will be the decision. And I'm already up to about 9 days between watering my pots. They're just not using it now. You know, I've got cool nights and I'm not getting the daytime heat. And the days are getting shorter at the end of the day. You know, the shorter days are going to start triggering things to slow up soon. So yeah, those are the plans for the Dendrobiums. As I said, I've got some that just come into a category of others. I've got the true resters, and most of the rest will just come into the either drier in winter because that's what should happen to them, or drier in winter because they're warmer growers and they don't like the cold. And if I don't do the drier in winter thing, I'll lose my root systems. So there we go then. So that's a... Oh, that guy is just so gobby. He can't hold a normal conversation. He's in his house. He's in his house. About 50 yards away. Still, it takes all sorts, I suppose. You just cannot talk. All he does is shout. Weird. Whereas most of us try and talk quietly, don't we? Naturally. As loud as is necessary for people to hear. Yeah, not everybody here, just the people you're talking to. Right, so there we go. Quick look around the Dendrobiums and the ideas and thoughts that go into them at this time of year. Initial thoughts are based on, is it still growing or has it finished? And then from there, it's a case of, if it's still growing, what's it going to do next? Is it going to continue to grow strong? Is it going to fizzle out because of the cooler temperatures and everything? And everything has to be adjusted accordingly. But although I divide them up into sets, the Latorias, the black hair types and the Phalaenopsis type, this time of year, they go into one set. And that's the set that will lose its roots if they stay wet and cold. So they have to be dealt with as a 3 sets merging together. Then we've got the true winter resters that without it won't bloom. And some of those are still growing, so they won't go into their rest yet. And then we've got an assorted little motley crew of others that I just go by what they're doing. If they're still growing, then they can have a bit of water and small amount of feed now and again. But the reduction in temperatures and the shortening days will slow everything up anyway. Even things that still appear to be growing quite strong, they're still going to slow up, with a lack of day lengths. But the one thing I won't have here that I used to have around the other place is, as these days get shorter, I'm not going to lose my light. Not here. Not with the lack of shade netting. I'm going to have a bright winter here. A bright winter. So those that need the bright light in the winter and the drop in temperature should be happy. But some of those started growing late this year, so they might not be as happy as they will be perhaps at the end of next year when we come to this time. So there we go, some Dendrobium stuff, maybe some helpful bits and pieces in there, and yeah, we'll see how we go. It's all good fun. I mean, I still like my Dendrobiums a lot, so you know, and I will add to them now and again. I'm not one of these that if I see one I haven't got, I must have it. I'm not like that. I like the variety. And as a consequence, some of the ones I've got might go. Yeah? Because they're not different enough. Anyway, we'll see. We won't worry about that now. It's the wrong time of year to be thinking about parting with things. Right, see you next time. Thanks for dropping by.